Let's join the game from this point where Karjakin played king b3, rook a5, rook d7, king d3, and now rook to b7. This was not really necessary, but Karjakin was afraid that there would come a check and the king would be pushed to the a file. Rook b7 was played, but let's imagine if you play rook d8, then I go check, king a4 now is important. Let's imagine you play king a3, now it's lost. So this is a good example to show how white can win such positions. What does white do here? Yes, king to c2. And the point is you want to play your knight to c3, and this is usually an excellent square, after which rook to b3 would be a checkmate. So here if king a4, then check and a mate. This is the usual mating pattern. The knight covers both the squares and the rook checkmates the king. Instead of king a4, if you were to play rook to a8, then once again knight c3, and we see that this is a mate. You can try for some kind of a stalemate here, but because white has this check already in hand, you will lose the rook. Rook c8, knight c3, rook b8, knight b1 is once again what we just saw right now, and white wins. So king a3 is a mistake, king a4 is the correct move, and after rook b1, it's not so easy to make progress. Of course, taking the knight is a blunder because king c4 and white wins, but just king a5, and it's not so easy to make progress here. Okay, so king d3, rook b7, rook c5, rook b8, check, king a4, king d4, and here you could see that Karjakin was clearly down to his last 1 second and he made this move. He was shaken up, and after king c4 he just made his next move very quickly and got checkmated. It's very rare that it happens with Sergey. He should have played rook to b8, and now after, okay, you can't play rook c1 because you lose the rook, and if you play something like rook h3, then rook c8 check, king d4, rook c1, and it's just a draw. So the drawing margin in knight plus rook against rook is quite large, and I would like to show you an illustrative game here which is very famous to make the points more clear. Everyone used to think that knight plus rook against rook is an easy draw, but then happened this game in 1996. Judith Polgar is white against Garry Kasparov, and here she lost the game with the white pieces, which was a big shock, and then everyone started taking this more seriously. Here Polgar played the move rook to a8. She could have just played king g4, and this is very important. When your king is getting cornered, you should try to get it out. Here threatening king g2, it seems like white is doing absolutely fine. But rook a8 was a mistake because now black could cut the king off with the move rook to g1. And now you will see that this king has less mobility. Of course, it's still a draw. The drawing margin is huge, but it starts getting tricky. Rook f8, king e5, check, king f4, and this is the usual trick where you can't take the knight because of a checkmate. So you have to give a check, and now king e4. Let's say if you play king h5 here, I give a check, and after king h6, rook h1, you lose the rook. And if you were to come to h4, I have knight g6. So this is a very unfortunate position for white where he loses the rook because of a fork. Rook e8 check, king f3, and now king h5. Here white could have played even check, knight f4, and it looks like white king is cornered because now rook g4 is a checkmate, but then comes rook g8, and this time it all works because the rook is over here, not somewhere here. If the rook were on say g6 in this position, Just for an example's sake, I can give a check and pick up your rook, but not here, because now knight g6 is possible, king h5, king f4, and just waiting, and a check, and it's a draw. So you can see how tricky defenses can exist. But king h5 looks normal and logical because you're trying to run away with the king. And if knight f4, king h6, white is fine. So knight g3 was a very interesting attempt. Here white should have played king g6, because now after knight e4, king h6, the knight is slightly misplaced. For example, after king f4 check, king e5 check, there is no way that this king can run away from the checks. The knight here is not so well placed. I can go here, and now I can start checking from this side. Of course, you shouldn't give another check here with rook f8, because then after knight f6 I will just jump in and it's a mate. So king h6 was played by Polgar instead of king g6. And now knight f5, king h7, king f4, and a check. And finally the king is pushed to the last rank. Now it doesn't have too many squares to go to. And also here there are big tricks to remember. For example, if rook f8, now this move looks normal, but the point that you cannot play now rook f6, cutting the king off from the 6th rank, or even go down, is the reason why this move is lost. So king g5, rook a8, king g6, king comes here. Of course you could check on this file, but I have always I can block it and you will have to go back. So rook g8, king h6, and now if rook a8, then knight to e7, with the idea of knight g6 check and rook g7, game over. So rook g1 makes more sense. Now rook d8 check, and I like the next move, rook to d3. This is how you win this endgame. It's not trivial, but it is worth remembering, because first of all, now rook g3 is impossible. I can take with the knight and there is no stalemate. So rook g1, if rook a8, then the good way to win is rook d6, king g8, and rook f6, cutting the king off. Remember this plan. And now next you will go check, rook f7, and check and mate. That's how it works. Rook b8 check, rook f7, and wins. So rook g1 is a better defense. Now rook f3, as we have seen, it's important to keep the f file under control. Now rook g4, if rook h1 check, king g6, rook g1, king f7, rook h1, knight e7, rook h7, king f8, and now an important move. Check if you can find it here, black to move. Well, if you play knight to d5, clearly you have the right intention of bringing the knight here, but the king starts to run, and this is exactly what you don't want. Hence it's important to bring him from here, so that if the king runs, you have king at f7, and this square is controlled by the knight. Rook h2, rook g3, rook f2, knight f6, and wins. So we were looking at rook g4 here, and now after knight e7, threatening a check on g6, first comes check on h4, and we reach the same position that we just looked at. White to black to move and win. Yes, knight g8, good work. King h7, king f7, and wins the game. Next move, rook g3. So that was a small explanation of why rook f8 in such a position is losing. Rook e8 doesn't lose, because after king g5 you have rook e6, cutting the king off for the time being. Black went knight d4, rook e1, king f6, and now I would usually give a check in such positions and play king g8, and it's not so easy to checkmate white. Rook d1, Again slightly inaccurate, and after rook d5 came the final error with rook a1. If check here, knight f5, just wait, perhaps rook d4, and now king g8, and I think white will wriggle out. It's a draw. But rook a1 was a mistake, because now comes the winning move. Try to find the winning move here. It's not so simple. Actually, I was thinking a good idea could be to just cut the king off, but then there's a check, knight e6, and it's not so easy here to make progress. While if you were to play knight e6 first, then it's better, because now after rook a6 you can play king f7, threatening a mate this side, rook a7, king g6, and this is winning because now you have a check coming here. So this is how the position can be improved. In the previous case here it was not possible, because after rook a6, knight e6, here somehow the rook is not in a good position, while when it was here it was threatening check down here and also here. So it gave it more flexibility. Knight e6 is the correct winning move. Rook a6, king f7, check, king g6, rook a8, and now the winning plan, as we have seen before, is first to play rook d6, a good move, rook b8, knight g5. We want to get the knight to this key square here, king g8, knight h7, rook c8, and now well, rook d7 is the fastest way to win, because I'm threatening check and mate. So rook f8, knight f6 wins. Rook d7 was played in the game, but somehow the progress is not easy if you don't find this plan. So the main reason why I suggested to put the rook here is to free the knight to go to this square. But after rook d7, if you start moving the knight, then you will have to face the checks. So Kasparov tried a bit here, and then he found this knight c7, rook g8, comes down, check, and now knight to e8. The point is that after rook f8, which looks like the only move, king g6, rook g8, king f7, king h7, rook h5, black wins. So this game actually started showing the resources for the side which has an extra knight, and people started to take this endgame pretty seriously. I would finally like to show you a game from my own practice where I had the extra knight, but I was not very successful. Well, this was my game against Abhishek Kelkar at under 25 nationals in 2012. A win here would have given me the national title. In the end, it ended in a draw, and so I finished second. But this just shows that if I had studied the Polgar-Kasparov game, I might have tried better. So here with the black pieces, you can see that I was able to actually corner the white king at some point, because the knight and the rook are able to do that with all these checks coming in. Here finally I managed to keep pushing him on the side and get him to the last rank. Check, check, and if you remember, in this position I played this move rook b2, but if you remember, Kasparov had gone rook e7, and this is what we studied. Here rook to c8 is a mistake because of king b5, and you remember I said that you can't play now rook c6 or rook c1, and that's the reason why black is winning in this position. So these tricks are good to know. Instead of going here, I could have played rook e7, and then the game with Kasparov and Polgar went something like this, where the final mistake came with rook h1 instead of rook c1 check. Okay, rook b2, and now you can see how white easily managed to wriggle out, because here there was this final trick I was hoping for. If he gives a check, I can move in with my king, and this is winning. because now a check, I go here, next comes, I block the check from here, and it's a mate. Rook h6, knight e7, king a7, king c4, king c5, rook h1, king c6, and now the king starts running away, as you can see. Once it starts to run, you have to build this up all over again. It's not at all easy. And here I had to play this move, king comes out, and I had already spent, I think, nearly 40 of my 50 moves rule here. And when the king came out, I think we agreed to a draw here because I was not able to checkmate him in 50 moves. So that's, I think, a good lesson or a good sort of summary on the knight plus rook against rook endgames. If you have the extra knight, keep in mind that you should try to implement all that you learned here. There are chances in the position, that's the important thing to know. While if you are the defender, make sure that you do not let your king get into the corner, and if it is in the corner, be very active. I hope this lesson was useful for you, and that knight plus rook against rook will be an end game that you will be able to play better. Well, I can see all of you here being really tired with the analysis that was given. Yes, these end games are difficult and it's not at all easy to learn them, but repetition and repeating the analysis is quite important. It helps. Many times we look at it once, we understand something, then you look at it again after a few days, you will understand it even more. So I'll recommend you to keep this video as your base to learn this endgame, and I'll give you one more tool which will help you to become better at this. Now what you should be doing is opening up the mega database in your chess base, and now go to press Ctrl F, go in advanced, and here you don't need game data, go into material. Once you go here, give a rook for white and one rook for black, and also give one knight for white, and you can ignore colors. So even if black has one rook and knight against a rook, it will search it. And now you press OK, and we make first of all pawns as 0. We don't want any pawns in the position for sure, and here we search for this. And now mega database will search all the rook plus knight against rook endgames, and this will turn out to be an excellent material, practical material for you to learn this endgame. Let's have a look at any one of these positions here. You will see you can just go through it and see how many games ended in a win or a loss. For example, what I would like to do is click on VCS and see all the annotated games. Suppose you look at this one, you will see that there are some annotations which is given, and maybe it helps you. You will learn such kind of famous stalemating tricks, and also you can click result and see how many games actually ended in decisive wins. So basically, even though we say this is a theoretical draw, it's still not very easy to execute it in practice. And this is how you can see some grandmasters also have gone wrong. How did they lose? Where was the critical mistake? You can think on your own, try to understand, and then after that you can even take the engine. For example, you press Ctrl K, start an engine, and then it shows here it's a draw with the let's check function, and suddenly there will come a mistake at some point when the evaluation completely changes. And here rook b7 was the only move, but this is a blunder, and now after knight b8 he began to win the game. Well, we've seen this already before. So this is how you can use ChessBase and Mega Database to learn these endgames better. This is Sagar Shah signing off, and I hope you learned a lot from this video. Thank you very much.